Thanks, everyone. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for being here tonight. I know how busy everyone is, how time poor everyone is, and so to be out of an evening like this is pretty important. I do value your time. I'd also like to thank Kylie before she gets too far. Kylie's put all of this together. There are 6 of these sessions in 3 venues over a space of about 6 weeks. It's a pretty big endeavour. So yeah, thanks, Kylie. Thanks for having me on board. I want to start by getting to know some people in the audience. Well, not individually. Well, maybe individually later, but I've got some questions for you. So I thought the first one maybe would be redundant, so I'll spin it on its head. Who in the audience doesn't own a dog? One. Maybe one. Who in the audience has never owned a dog? Yeah, cool. Also. Wow, well, thanks for coming. Who in the audience loves dogs? Good answer. Who in the audience has had a dog who is their best friend in the whole world? Yeah, good, me too. It's pretty cool, huh? He is neither of these dogs. He was a 30-kilo brindle Staffy Shepherd, so you can tell which out of these 2 are mine, my current hounds. You can tell which out of these 2 I brought home. Yeah, that's it. This is Eleanor. She's a Staffy Kelpie something. This is Andrew. This is my wife's dog. Who in the audience has a dog who at some point in time does things that they potentially wish they wouldn't? I say that deliberately while we're talking about Andrew. Who has had a dog that they love but maybe don't like? Yeah, it's cool. So I got some, at times. All right. I've got some collaborators in the audience. Listen, it's not a fun place to be, right? But that's why we're here. Because I had that, even with my veterinary experience, vet school, those kind of things. I kind of found myself looking at this guy going, mate, what's going on in your head? I don't like what you're doing. I don't like what you're doing to me. And I think if we understand them better and we meet them where they are, everything can be better. And hopefully one day, that guy is my best friend like the other one. I'll keep you in the loop. So I thought really quickly, I know you're not here to hear me talk about me, but I thought I'd tell you what the hell have I done before now to get here. I'm a vet. I went through the University of Queensland back in the good old days when it was in St Lucia in Brisbane before they moved it out to Gatton. I spent a year in Brisbane. I thought I wanted to be an equine vet. That was a mistake. I moved to the Gold Coast in 2007 and found small animals and never looked back. Some of you may remember Coast Vet, which then sold out and became one of the Green Cross clinics. I'm not going to ask who has heard of Green Cross. I did my time there and got out and started the Vet Collective. So the Vet Collective is a clinic down in Miami. We're a general practice clinic, but we do everything low stress, fear-free as best we possibly can. I've got the Vet Behaviour Clinic. That's a behavioural specialty clinic, so we're seeing behavioural consults. I'm a member, so by examination member, like it's not just sign up and get your card, of the Australian College of Veterinary Behaviour, and I'm a resident in the American College, so that means I'm studying to become a specialist. The reason I'm studying through the American College is that there are no current specialists in Queensland, so there are only 4 in Australia, and they're concentrated in Sydney and Melbourne. I'm fear-free certified, so that's something if you're not familiar with, we'll talk about a bit through the course of these presentations. Is Fear-free is a group in the States who are promoting low stress handling and how we can better meet and look after our small animals, our pets. And I'm a member of the Pet Professionals Guild of Australia, so PPGA are an organisation that accredit and look out for positive reinforcement professionals. So the sessions that we're here for, these pet education and training sessions, so we're here to do some, I guess, learning together, some proactive stuff with the goal of tonight understanding body language better, but understanding canine behaviour with the goal then eventually of keeping our pets safe and keeping us safe. and managing behaviour issues. So the future sessions are going to be specifically about certain behaviours, particularly barking and aggression, as well as protecting wildlife, because they're some of the things that the city struggle with. So we've currently got about 69,000 registered dogs in the city. And, you know, we as the pet owners or guardians, or however we want to voice that, are responsible for looking after those animals and keeping them under our control and making sure they're not causing harm or nuisance. And the council, the City of Gold Coast continues to have issues with biting and barking, and the state government have recently released some new legislation and increased some penalties. These are some stats about the city's dog bite stats. So you can see, you know, year on year, we're really not kind of doing better and better. And hopefully with these kind of sessions, if we can understand things and manage things better, we can get those numbers down. But subsequently, the authorities are increasing some of the fines. So on the Gold Coast last year, we had 668 reported dog bites. 303 of those were escaped containment, so meaning the dog had got out from home, shot under the garage door, shot through the side gate, and was out at large in the neighbourhood. 360 of those were not under effective control, meaning they were with their owner, but they weren't on lead, or they were in an off-leash park and they weren't under control. And a stat from Queensland Health is that between 2012 and 2022, we had a 65% increase in emergency department presentations for bite wounds. So not great things. Subsequently, these are the numbers, these are the potential penalties we're now looking at. And so these numbers, these fines are going up. You know, we're now also looking at if dogs, you know, it's hard to talk about, but it happens, right? Is that if dogs hurt or kill another person, people are now looking at jail time. You know, these things are serious, and the authorities are getting serious about them. All right, on to the good stuff. So this again is not obviously a brindle dog, but this is one of my greatest teachers of all time. This is a dog named Jammo, who my wife brought home from the emergency hospital, and he had just about all of the behavioural diagnoses, I think. So he had, at his previous owner's home, during a thunderstorm, had decided to dig out through the side fence. So he had storm phobia, we didn't know. Dig out under the side fence, got stuck under the side fence, and the two Rottweilers in the next yard chewed on his face. So he ended up in emergency, bunch of drains in his face. I think he broke his cheekbone. We brought him home. We thought, oh, he's the world's most handsome dog. We'll get him back on his feet. We'll find him a home. And I don't know what came first, falling in love with him or realising that it was completely inappropriate to rehome to someone else. And so complete foster fail. Yep. And so we had him for 11 years, from 4 to 15. And he taught me a lot of things. And so thanks, Jam. So the plan today, the title, Body Language and Social Etiquette. But I wanted to dive into some foundation stuff, because I think if we can get this information out there about where our dogs have come from, and I mean that, yes, in terms of like, where were they born, where was their breeder, but also over the last, you know, short periods like 40, 50,000 years, maybe we get a better concept of why they do some of the things that they do, and we can meet them in a better place. So evolution and domestication, words you'll no doubt be familiar with, but I think those things go together, and we'll dive into that. Dominance mythology. Mythology is going to give away my stance on that. No doubt you've all heard about it, and I've got some questions. But talking through where does that come from. Development, so canine development, from wee little fetus in mum through to big old 15-year-old marama. Social structure and interaction, how does that vary? What does a pack of dogs look like? What does that compare to a pack of wolves? What does it look like when they're in our home, right? Is that a pack? How does that work? Communication, so how do dogs communicate? How do we communicate? What's it look like us communicating to them trying to communicate to us? Body language, obviously in the title, that's a pretty big one. We'll spend a bit of time there. The confines of modern life, because we do some crazy things to dogs, right? We like tie these ropes around their neck, and we don't let them walk more than 2 meters from us, and then we put them in a space with timber around it so that they can't go to the next timber space. And that probably changes their behaviour a little bit. And then etiquette. Etiquette is completely a human construct, right? Like, we've all learned that when you're in a room that looks like this, you don't get up and run laps around the chairs. I mean, someone could do it, but we'd all think they're a little bit kooky. But we've learned that, right? And so I think we need to teach that to our dogs. So, evolution and domestication kind of go hand in hand, right? Evolution kicked off the process. So there's a natural mutation in the genetic code of the predecessor to the dog and today's wolf. So I guess what a lot of people think is that our dogs today evolved from our wolves today. Not the case. Both came from an ancestor. The domestication started probably about 25,000 years ago. I don't think we've got exact numbers. They're pretty big numbers. So yeah, that genetic variation resulted in behavioural change and allowed domestication to happen. I think it's important to know we didn't domesticate the dog. It happened, just like that. And so it's a process that happened, right? We're living here, the wolves are living there, and gradually over thousands of years, they come closer and closer and closer, and then the next minute people are burying themselves under pyramids with them, right? So they are social beings, and they learned through a co-evolutionary process that these two populations grew together. And I think some people, and I'm happy to think this, is that dogs domesticated us while we domesticated dogs. The interesting thing is the convergent behavioural evolution, and I had to read that because they're big words. Convergent evolution compared to, so wolves, dogs, divergent evolution. Convergent evolution is two very, very different species doing the same thing on an evolutionary path. So people and dogs did that, and the crazy thing is that dogs read some human body language, particularly facial language, better than our closest ancestors, like chimps and bonobos. So we've got this canid that if you take this back way up here to where we split off, we're nowhere near these guys, but somehow they're reading us better than our closest ancestors. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's the amazing thing about our relationship with dogs. And then at some point, we took dogs and we started artificially selecting them and creating breeds, right? And then we ended up with all kinds of stuff. One great example of the domestication process was a study that was done in Russia through the 1900s. Dmitry Baliev was a scientist, and it's a cool story because he was breaking all kinds of rules. Him and his team would have been killed by the politicians of the time. You're right. Take it. They would have been killed because at the time science was a bit taboo. And so they were out in the boonies, in the snow, and they tamed silver foxes. And I don't know if anyone's read about this, but they chose these foxes purely based on sociality. So these foxes were on a fur farm. So they're in cages, they're sitting out in the snow, not awaiting a necessarily great fate, but they picked their initial stock based on how tame they were. And at the beginning, that was how far away from the cage would they react aggressively. And I mean, it might have been 10 metres at the beginning. Slowly over generations, they picked more and more social animals. Over a short period of time, because they did this artificially, they did this in kind of laboratory settings, they bred them, they had something like 20 or 30 generations, and they ended up getting more and more social foxes to the point where there are these great photos of people like hugging foxes and playing with them. But they became more and more dog-like. So they had changes in their coat, they became spotty. They had changes in their tails, they curled up and they started wagging. They had changes in their heads, they got shorter. What else? Read notes. There's a lot of it. Their adrenaline levels came down, which I didn't realise is linked to melanin. So changes in coat and changes in stress response went together. I think that's pretty cool and probably nerdy. They had a delayed fear response. So behaviourally speaking, those tame foxes compared to the ones that were still out in the cages were way less fearful in terms of that timeline. So it's a really cool example of what this domestication process is. Hope no one minds me geeking out. All right, dominance. Who here hasn't heard of dominance, RE, dogs, behaviour? Yeah, you little man. All right, I'll explain this for you. Who in here has been told their dog is doing something because it is dominant, wants to be dominant, insert, thinks it's the alpha, boss of the pack, yada yada? Who has had something like that? Yeah, cool. So all of that information came from some studies that were started in the 1930s, so real recent, finished up through the kind of 1950s, and in the 1970s, a man named David Meach in the US published a paper called The Wolf, The Ecology and Behaviour of an Endangered Species. Those studies took 10 wolves and whacked them in a 200 square metre space. So probably about the size of this auditorium. 10 wolves that are potentially used to roaming hundreds of acres, maybe hectares, whacked them in this room. That sounds like either jail or the Big Brother house. And then they judged their behaviour, just like we do for Big Brother, right? So, and what they saw was those wolves fought. And they went, okay, cool. Let's come up with some kind of pattern that we can put them in. I know there's this thing called the pecking order that we found in chickens, where if I put a group of 10 chickens here and I watch them for long enough, I can go, oh, you're 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's consistent. It works. Checks out. Pecking order, chickens, check. We applied that to wolves. Wolves from different families thrown in this tiny little enclosure. So not long after that paper was published, David Meach begged the publishers to stop printing it. This picture I took myself in June at David Meach's International Wolf Centre in Minnesota. Sorry, in Minnesota, north of Minneapolis. It is a cool place. It's not quite as cool as I thought it was going to be. It's kind of touristy and there's not many wolves. But yeah, still pretty photos of wolves, right? Well, a wolf. I can count. Development. So these little guys, again, you've met before. Andrew, or Andy when he's not in trouble, and Eleanor as a little pup here when we just brought her home. At this point in time, Andy was probably 2. I loved him. I probably still didn't like him. Eleanor is brindle and adorable, and so what could she do wrong? But yeah, so what do we know about dogs? Fetal development is exceptionally important. We know from dog studies and from rat studies and from human studies that what's going on around mum while mum is cooking those puppies is really important. If mum's stressed, those dogs come out prone to stress. If she's fearing for her life, they come out, they're anxious, they're worried. But then from there, they come out neonatal stage. So the neonatal stage is about their first 2 weeks of life. And anyone who's seen puppy, a bitch whelp, brand new puppies, their eyes are closed, their ears are closed. They're basing pretty much everything on tactile and smell and taste. They really need their mum. They're nursing a lot. They need to be stimulated to go to the toilet. The crazy thing is that there are some studies that show that frequent handling in the right way actually causes increased cardiovascular function later down the track, increased adrenal health and a reduced stress response. Other things like decreased emotionality, increased disease tolerance. There was some studies done in privately owned dogs, and there were some studies done by the US military, which sounds scary, but puppies are puppies and the studies are good. Then the transitional stage, which doesn't get much loving, is only about a week long. And so that's that point when their eyes and their ears are starting to open up, they're starting to walk, they're starting to bond with their litter mates. So they're not complete babies, but they're also not in the socialisation period. Who's heard of socialisation, I wonder? Who's been told that their dog needs to be socialised? Who's been told that when their dog's like 2 or 5? Yeah. The socialisation period starts at 3 weeks of age, and depending on which book you read, finishes at 12, 13, 14 weeks. It's done. It's a stage. It's a developmental stage. During that time, they have reduced, at least through periods of it, reduced fear response to the world. And they have an amazing adaptability and ability to learn what the world around them looks like. So deficits in socialisation during that period, socialisation, can result in active avoidance of other dogs, socially and sexually. Dogs that are described as forever uncomfortable in one of these studies, and generalised fear of new environments. So appropriate exposure during this socialisation period, which should be curated to each individual, and I'll get back to that in a sec, is kind of like a social vaccination, right? That gives us an emotional or behavioural immunity. And I say it should be curated in that we've got that puppy, we get it home, it's 10 weeks old, great, socialisation period, I'm there. And I take it to puppy school and it's scared of the world. And someone says, yeah, just get out there, go and socialise, That's trauma. So socialisation is a process and it should be leveraged to every individual. You're going to get that. I'm going to use an example, a stereotype here, right? You get a 10-week-old golden retriever. I'm even going to say it's a boy, right? And it rocks up, turns up to puppy school, and I was like, hi, what's going on? There's a dog, hi, and it doesn't care. Cool. Let it do some stuff. Not at the detriment of all the other dogs, right? But so it varies. That's the dog. Great, chuck it in a cart, take it to Bunnings, take it to the cafe. Now, I deliberately said it's like a social vaccination to build behavioural immunity. Because one of the things I hear people say all the time is, yeah, but he hadn't had all his vaccines. So there were studies done to look at the risk of parvovirus. Who hasn't heard of parvovirus? Great, how about that? The risk of parvovirus for puppies attending puppy school. There was no increased incidence of parvovirus infections in dogs that went to puppy school. But there are active avoidance of other dogs, generalised fear, and lack of comfort. So socialisation, a process, a time period, not socialising. And it seems facetious, it seems a little bit over the top, but socialising is what we're all going to do down when Kylie whips out the spread at intermission, right? Socialising. Dogs do it. The 2-year-olds, the 5-year-olds, they go to the park, socialising. Socialisation, they do it when they're 3 weeks old to 12 weeks old. Juvenile. Yay. Here it is. Teenagers. How fun. Now, I don't have kids. I don't really deal with children a whole lot, except for when they come in and are fun in my consult room. Hey, little buddy. Not a teenager, which is excellent. But teenagers, I pulled this quote, short attention span, excitable, emphasis on immediate gratification, and big feelings. Who's had a dog like that? Yeah. Andrew. Sorry, buddy. One day he'll watch this back and hate me. So yeah, juvenile, they're adolescent, they're teenagers, they're annoying, they grow out of it. That kicks in, somewhere between 6 and 18 months. I know that's a big window, let's say 12 in the middle, lasts them through to 2 or 3 years. Then somewhere in there kicks in sexual maturity, depending on boy, girl, how big they are. And then at the end of adolescence is social maturity, right? So that's 3, if you're a working Cocker Spaniel, maybe 4. And that's kind of like the difference of saying, yeah, I'm 18, I can drive a car, I can vote, I can go drinking, I'm an adult. And then you turn 40 and you realise that you weren't really an adult until you were 35. And so adolescence, juvenile stage of development is exceptionally important, but it's kind of that bit where I was going to say hold on, but there's lots that we can be done because it can be a very trying time. Communication for dogs. So smell. Look, we all know, depending on what you read, their noses are 100 times better than ours. They're 1,000 times better than ours. I read a paper where they were looking at dogs' ability to detect a fingerprint on glass, and I think they stopped at 6 weeks because the dogs were still nailing that fingerprint 6 weeks after someone touched it. So that's pretty good. That's good enough for me, right? It's good enough that I'm like, I don't get it. I'm just going to tap out and say your noses are good. They use predominantly urine and feces to communicate by smell. So the cool thing about those is that they can put it there and they can walk away and that message is there for a while, and they can tell not only who was there, they can tell when they were there, they can tell what was going on with them, were they in season, who were they with, because there's smell next to them. They might have emitted some pheromones, we'll get to that, from their paws, Someone else might have pooped just down the way here and they'll know when they were there and they'll be like, oh, they were both here at the same time. So there's all this information that's kicking around that's lasting. So when your dog's like dragging you over to the paper bark, Andrew, there's I don't know, if they can smell a thumbprint on glass 6 weeks later, imagine a big pea on a paperbark tree. That's like the internet, I just thought of that. I didn't have that earlier. Pheromones. So a lot of people think of pheromones like smell, but dogs have this organ that we sort of have, but it's no good, called the vomeronasal organ. It's at the bottom of the nose and the top of the mouth. It's and it opens here. That's hard to do. Have you ever seen a horse do what's called the flamen? This. Yeah. So they do it really well. Cats do it. Dogs do it a little bit. Dogs fix that by licking. So when dogs are sniffing maybe a pea on a paperbark tree and they go, they are liquefying the scent and pumping it into their vomeronasal organ. And pheromones, unlike smell, are not there for yeah, that's nice, that was Daisy, that was they're like chemicals, binding receptors. And so that's like rock solid information. Vocalization, we're familiar with, whining, barking, growling. Different types of vocalizations mean different things. Most of us have a dog that we're like, ooh, that means someone's at the front door. Oh, that means they don't like them, So vocalization is important, and it's also one of the places when we get into the other talks, for those of you that are coming, we're going to absolutely talk about barking. We're going to talk about some behaviours that are normal but maybe undesirable at times. Body language, I won't talk about just yet because we'll get there. And then touch. Touch is pretty limited in dogs. They will rub against each other. Occasionally a dog will drop a chin on a shoulder. They will groom each other, but I think much less so than what we put on them. Body language. Now I love this image. Those of you who don't know, it's pretty tiny at the bottom there. There's an artist named Lily Chin. She's a illustrator, and she's worked with a lot of great dog trainers and veterinary behaviourists to create specific work for textbooks and things. But she's also got on her website some amazing free downloadable things. And now what I I think one of the downfalls of something like this is, it's a little whimsical and fun, which that's a good thing. One of the downsides is I think some of the information gets a little lost in these still illustrations, but I think it's super fun, right? And we can look at these things. And my top point there is it's the whole picture. So, okay, we've got still, but, what I want to look at in each of these, and we'll go into the individual body components, but by looking at the whole picture, we see an overall idea of what's happening here. So, hey, my ears are up and they're pointed forward. My eyes are open, wide, and pointed forward. I'm probably pretty interested in something. I'm standing straight. But here, I'm leaning forward, but see how far my back legs are? That's like hedging my bets, I'm pretty interested, but if I want to go that way, I'm ready. Anxious? Let's make me small. So again, looking at that whole picture, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get little. And then go from that to this is like, I'm trying to get small. Oh, that didn't work. Next step. And now I don't want to go through each of these individually because I got some more focused graphics for us to dive into. But yeah, if ever you're interested, these are great. There are cat ones. There are some great graphics about specific training things. But yeah, in terms of then specific body parts or aspects, I think the posture is really important. So how are they standing? Are they tall? Are they crouched? Are they forward? Are they back? Are they kind of hedging their bets like that guy or girl in Suspicious, where it's like, yeah, I want to know what's going on there, but I'm sort of back here as well. Like, it's every piece of the picture matters. Tension, I think, is so important. I can take two dogs and have them watch them doing the same thing. I'm standing tall, my ears are erect, my tail is wagging, and by changing the tension in that dog, it changes the entire message. So I'm stiff, my neck is rock solid, my whole body is tense, I'm on you, and my tail is doing this. Means a very different thing to I'm tall and my ears are looking at you and I'm kind of like this and my tail's going, hi. I'm worried about one and I'm not worried about the other one. Facially, eyes, big, small. Facial tension, so furrowing, they get worried and wrinkly like we do. Ears do so much. And we'll talk about breeds in a bit because some of them don't have ears or the ability to use them. I'm forward, I'm checking things out. I'm at the side, I'm kind of worried. They're back, they're pinned. I'm really, really worried about this. Mouth, again, tension. I think mouth gets messed up a bit, big open mouth. Oh, it's smiling. It's like, again, tension comes into it, right? Nah, if this is pulled back hard and there's tension up here and I can see all your teeth, like not even snarling, right, is you're not a happy boy or girl. Again, look at the whole head. Where are they looking? Are they looking at us? Are they looking away from us? Are they looking with the side? I didn't say that about eyes, right? I said big and small, but like where are they looking? Are they avoiding us? Are they kind of keeping an eye on us but doing this? It's all important. Tail, we all know about the tail, right? They're wagging it, we're good. I think wagging tail means I'm up for some kind of engagement. I'm communicating something, right? They're not doing it for no reason. But again, how much they're moving it, the tension, and then how high all really matter. So we all know tucked, right up, under. That's like I'm protecting my sensitive bits. I don't like what's going on here, but I'm trying to pretend like this isn't happening. Straight up in the air, flagging, that's not a great sign. And then my mate, my 10-week-old golden retriever with the big floppy tail, that's a good sign. Get in there. Body, so whole body. I said about tension, shape. I think there's a really nice picture here somewhere that talks about the C shape, but I need to find it. So there's that curved body. I don't know that I love the word polite, but that C shape, that like high, like it's cute. It's cute for a reason. It's generally a pretty polite. It's a pretty friendly kind of posture. And then limbs. I think their legs don't necessarily get enough credit. That's where they stand tall. That's where they move forward. That's where they lean back, how they crouch. That's how they fidget. You see the dog that just has ants in its pants and it's like, okay, cool, there's something going on in there. Or that 1 foot up. So often, oh yeah, he wants to give me 5. It's like, no, he's probably trying to get some information because he's not super pumped about what's going on here. And so then breed-wise, what happens when we make ears that don't do this? Andy's ears don't do that. They can't stand up tall. What happens when, have we got snarling in here? This cute little dude doesn't have much of a nose, right? Much of a muzzle. So what happens when we squish it even further and I can no longer retract my lips or pull my lips up and show you my teeth? As a vet back in the day, I was like, yeah, great, that pug can't bite me. But it didn't mean it was happy, right? We've bred some of these dogs we've bred that they really struggle to communicate, so we've got to look harder. All right, so body language. What happens then when things aren't going well? Behaviourally, when we're seeing dogs who aren't happy, aren't comfy, fearful, anxious, stressed, distressed, insert whatever words we want, we generally think about the 4 Fs. Fight, flight, fidget, freeze. For some reason we put them in that order. I don't think they come to us in that order. I think more often than not we get fidget. They're the ones we often miss. They're the dogs, like I said, they've got ants in their pants, they're licking their lips, they're yawning, they're shaking. All of these little things, I think some of those things, yawning, shaking, are displacement. They're trying to get steam out. But some of those things, pouring, they're asking questions. Licking is an appeasement behaviour. Pouring, can I get some information? I'm not 100% sure. I might not be freaking out, but I need some more information here, and I'm actively trying to solicit information about, do I need to be worried? Fidget. I think at any point along here we can get freeze. Unfortunately, I think in the realms of animal professionals, we can use that. And I say unfortunately, I think pet professionals, vets included, groomers, whoever else, can use freeze because the dog goes, oh, I'm on the vet's table. If I just stand here and do nothing, maybe it'll go away. And the vet's like, let me just pull out my thermometer. Oh, he was such a good boy. No, he wasn't a good boy. He was frozen stiff, and please bear with vets. What I didn't say at the beginning is I went to the University of Queensland 5 years and I got less than 2 days of training in behaviour. And I think that's still the case. And so we're trying to change that, but vets are trying to learn this stuff on the fly later too. Doesn't mean it's okay to rely on inhibition, freezing on the table and shove things where they shove them. But, we're all learning together. Flight. That's what happens when a dog's not shut in a room or in a yard or on a lead, right? And we've got to do those things, right? There are great reasons for all those things, including not getting fined. But so often we take flight away, and guilty as a vet, right? They can't run away from me. We're in a consult room. And so we end up here, right? I don't listen. I either don't listen or I use it to my advantage. We end up here. And so we're going to do, one of the talks is going to largely talk about behaviours that are manifested by unhealthy emotional states and motivations. And you can bet there'll be some aggression in there. Cool. Some more amazing graphics for body language here. So start with some happy ones. Thinking tension. I can see this guy or girl damn it, sorry. Being all soft through the forelimbs, that bum's up in the air kind of wiggling, that tail's flicking around, the play bow, her mouth is soft, the tongue's hanging out. Here's a paw that comes up, but it's to whap you in the face, and get you to play with that rope. We're saying relaxed, we're saying soft, lack of tension, mouth open but not pulled open. It's kind of gaping. It's like, I don't need to do anything here. Loose body. That's the general feel. It's chill. We're good. Take that into greetings. And so I think we've got different dogs with different greeting styles, and this can then vary depending on their current feeling and arousal. So we've probably all seen these things. So here's two dogs who kind of come in a little bit hot, a little bit stiff. They check each other out, tails up in the air, probably a little bit stiff, ears are forward, probably a little bit stiff. It's a bit direct. Weights, on all fours, I'm ready to go if I need to. But then, with a bit of time, they curve around. Again, I was talking before, dogs don't do face-to-face. When we walk them in, and we'll talk at some point about lead greetings, we walk them in on lead, and by nature, we're walking on this 1 metre concrete strip that doesn't make sense if you're a dog. They're both tied to the people behind them, and we run them at each other straight ahead. It's like we're asking them to pick a fight. And so, this is normal. I come in side by side. I want to sniff your junk. Remember, smells, pheromones. Tell me what you were doing yesterday. Here it is. It's all back here. So they curve in, then they soften up. They can go from this. They can recover if they've got room and time. Over here, we're talking about deferential greeting. So this is a dog that's coming in and saying, hey, cool, I mean you no harm. This is the hey, whoa, we're good. So, the ears are back, it's kind of low, it's saying eyes are kind of soft. Again, all these soft things, foot up. So again, when that's done to us, that's like this, hey, I'm not 100% sure here, but I mean no threat. Conflict avoidant. So on the other side of that, this dog's saying, hey, yeah, no, I don't want any trouble too. I'm not staring you down. Leaning out, looking away, tails down, probably not moving. And then from there they can recover. They can soften up and improve the situation. If not, we start to get these things. So again, we're coming back into these correlating to the 4Fs, to the tension, to the fidgeting, to the freezing. So we're getting tension here between the eyes, along the muzzle, the ears flatten out. I'm crouched down a little bit, my tail's dropped, everything's a bit stiff and still. I'm not looking at you. If I'm at the vet clinic, I'm not taking your treats anymore because you just shoved something where you shouldn't have. If I can, I'm looking away, I'm walking away. And then over here you can see the yawn. I said to you before about yawning, and that's a displacement behaviour. So that's trying to shake this off. Going on from that, what they're calling a tap out. This is potentially the dog, and this is not to say every dog that rolls over, at its home is doing this, but the dog that's tails up, it's stiff, it might even wee. This is not a good scene. And displacement behaviours, like I said before, things that are out of context. So I'm sniffing where I've been here for 10 minutes, there's clearly nothing here, but now I'm just sniffing. Now I'm just scratching. Now I'm just shaking off. These are all ways to kind of dissipate that stress. We get this escalation from relaxed to aggressive. Relaxed, alert, aggressive. Again, we're seeing changes in ears, eyes, mouth, tension, the overall picture. And here it is in full body. So we get, this is starting not relaxed, but alert, then kind of defensive, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here, but I'll fight you for it, and now I'm coming for you. And then lastly, talking about offensive versus defensive. I think the important part up here is body language can be a mix. So I think I see a lot of dogs that are aggressive and they look very, very forward. They're not aggressive. I don't see aggressive dogs. I see dogs who display aggression in certain contexts. And I think it can start because they're scared, and over time they learn that they can control their environment with it, and so they become less scared, and so they become the dog that chases the postie and runs at him, and people say, he's not scared, look at him. And it's like, no, but I think it can have come from there. And so this is a great point, is that you can get this mix of body language, you can get change over time. And I talked before about confines of modern life, and I talked before about what we've done to our dogs, right? Now, don't get me wrong, I love these guys, they're bloody cute, but, what have we done? How's this guy snarl? How's he pull his lips back? His ears work, but not his mouth. And so I think, modern life, we're asking more and more and more of our dogs. We're treating them more and more like primates than like canids. There's more people, there's more dogs. We're restricting them more, like this. Please don't do this. This is not any kind of freedom or choice. Increasing restraint. All of this just leads to frustration, and we're asking for trouble, which we'll get to in subsequent lectures. And we talked about breeds. One thing I didn't talk about, I talked about ears, I talked about noses, tails. I'm really, really thankful that most of our dogs have tails now, because they can talk to each other. So what I want to go through here is, we had a conversation about things we wanted to discuss and things we wanted to talk about, and etiquette, social skills, manners. Everyone, you hear these terms, dog needs to learn some manners, some leash manners. And I think about that stuff and I'm like, what does that even mean? And I think these guys are born and do grow up with some innate social skills, but those innate social skills are canine social skills, right? So, and they're really good at it. Most of the time, you bring a dog home and you've got dogs at home. I was young and stupid and ended up with 3 dogs at home, and they did really well. No thanks to me. Despite me probably. So they have social skills. We just have to teach them what that means in human society, right? So I think it's important. We need to teach this stuff, right? It's not innate. So human social skills and etiquette, what we want from them in our society is not innate. The word ethics is there because I think we bring them in often. Humans bring these guys into this world. We breed these dogs. We bring them into our homes and into our lives and into society. And now we're asking them to do certain things, and we're going to teach them those things. But I think there's an ethical responsibility for us to do that in a certain way, and do it in a way that improves their quality of life and not deteriorates their quality of life. Learning. So we're going to run through learning theory. I'm going to give you the speed dating version of Learning 101. We're going to talk about some tools, and I'm going to talk you through ethics. So this is a graphic that I stole from Susan Friedman, borrowed. Susan Friedman is a professor in the United States who deals with she's an applied animal behaviorist. So she deals with animal behavior, ethology, but particularly learning. And so again, I think there is a welfare implication when we're bringing these animals into our house and then attempting to teach them things. There is a way that we can do this that improves behaviour, improves their quality of life and ours, improves the welfare, improves our bond so that we can all have those best friends, avoids trauma in the process, and avoids sensitisation. We'll run through some terms in a bit. But so step 1, I'm sure you guys are here, so I'm sure we're all doing this, right? We're doing the basics. We go to the vet when we need to. We're feeding our dogs. We're looking after them. Antecedent arrangements is a fancy term to say, cool, we're setting up the environment in a way that they can succeed. So I'm going to use an example. Where I walk my dogs, there is a neighbour with a small courtyard that leads to a pool fence that is about there. and the walking path is about here, and there's a pool fence gate there where the two kelpies sit and yell at everyone. That's not setting up for success. And then, I'll deal with the and then later. So antecedent arrangements. How can we set this up so our dogs do better? Andy is a bird dog. He loves to scream about birds. So I go out into the backyard before I let them out to go to the bathroom and check that there are no birds or lizards, because Andy will run around the backyard at any time of the day, just screaming. Antecedent arrangements. We can do good. It's easy. It's simple. It's not always easy. At 4 a.m. when you're going out and wandering around the backyard in the wet so that he doesn't scream. Positive reinforcement. That's always step one. It's pretty much the end, right? And we'll get there. Differential reinforcement of alternative behaviours is about teaching them things that mean they won't do the thing we don't like. And the reason it's next is that it's kind of narrowing in their choice a little. Rather than saying, cool, here's something fun to do, we're saying, hey, here's something I'd like you to do, because then you can't do that. And so that's why it's next. Then next up there is extinction, negative reinforcement, negative punishment. I'll get to that in 2 seconds, all right? Finally, positive punishment. We're going to talk about classical versus operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is about an individual learning how they can operate in the world. So it's ABC, antecedent, so what's the context, what happens, then I do this with this outcome. The example there is, because B.F. Skinner was the kind of godfather of behaviorism back in the States in the 1950s, and they did lots of things with rats in boxes, right? And they would press levers, they would get food. So the rat learns, I push a lever, I get food, I'm going to keep pushing the lever. It's the same as the dog learns, cool, when you say sit, that's the antecedent, and I put my butt on the floor, that's the behaviour. You give me a treat, that's the consequence. Operant behaviour. Classical, also known as respondent or Pavlovian. Has everyone heard of Pavlov's dogs? Understand that concept? Yep. So Pavlovian conditioning, no you haven't. So Ivan Pavlov was a physiologist back in, I think, the early 1900s. He was doing a study, I don't know on what. He was collecting saliva from German Shepherds. He had these plastic devices that would catch their saliva. And as part of it, he would ring this bell for dinner and he'd put down their chow. And what he found accidentally at some point was that he could ring the bell, no food, they would salivate. And so that at the time was a bit of a revolution, because what that says to us is that he paired two stimuli, so bell, food, and he conditioned an innate or involuntary response. So who in the audience, I just tried to point at you with my laser, can salivate on cue? It's weird, right? It's involuntary. We can't do it. I can't be like, okay, cool, I'm going to eat now, salivate, right? Neither can the dogs, but he could cue it with this bell. And so, all of that to say, not that I want to teach your dogs to salivate, because no doubt the mastiffs in the audience are doing plenty of that. We use this to cue emotional response. Because emotional response, again, kind of involuntary. Actually, can anyone just be happy? Because I want to know. I want to know how. But emotional responses are conditioned, and we can pair them to stimuli and condition that emotional response. So that's where classical conditioning comes into dog training, is that I don't want to make them salivate. I want to be able to create positive emotional associations. So 2 things, very important to say, those 2 things happen together all the time. I teach my dog to sit with positive reinforcement. It's happy. because it's hanging out with me, it's doing its thing, it's getting fed, this is great. So we've got classical conditioning happening with operant and vice versa. And so I should give an example. Classical conditioning to create a positive emotional response in association with something. I might say, cool, I'm going to teach this dog to wear a muzzle. Every time I pull this muzzle out of a hat, I'm going to give it a treat. At some point, really quickly, you pull that muzzle out, no treats in sight, and the dog's like, oh, that's the best. Kind of like the lead, right? You pick the lead up and the dog's like, yes. Because it knows it's going for a walk, but there's an association there. The lead actually makes the dog happy. And the best analogy I had for myself that came to me one day in a consult was, I really like my job. I'm lucky. I'm someone that enjoys their job. But still, Monday morning driving to work sucks, right? And one day, a while back, I had a motorbike for a while. And riding motorbikes is really fun. And one day I rode my motorbike to work and had a really good time riding to work on a Monday morning. And that's a positive emotional association. So I knew I was riding to work, but I was doing my happy thing, and so I felt good about it. I'll give you an example. Classical conditioning. I did. Muzzle. We can make it fun. We can also do it with things that the dog doesn't like, but we'll get there in other lectures. Operant conditioning. Sit, butt to floor, good boy. That's positive reinforcement. Operant conditioning has what we call the 4 quadrants. Important terminology thing. Positive doesn't mean good. Positive means I'm adding something. That can be a treat, that can be a smack. Right? I'm adding. Negative means I'm taking away. I can take away something good, like access to the owner, or I can take away something bad, like pressure on a choker chain. And we're going to talk about why I wouldn't do that. Not that I wouldn't take the pressure away, but why I wouldn't do that at all. Positive, negative. Reinforcement by definition. A reinforcer is something that makes a behaviour happen more. A punisher is something that makes a behaviour happen less. So to put that all together, positive reinforcement is I'm going to add something good to make the behaviour happen more. Positive punishment, I'm going to add something bad to make the behaviour happen less. The other side, negative reinforcement, I'm going to take away something bad to make the behaviour happen more. I'm going to take away something good to make the behaviour happen less, i.e. time out. Takes a little bit of time to get your head around that. The moral of the story is we're going to hang out up here because we can do a better job, we can get great results, and we can have friends. Because, quick show of hands, who in the audience bought a dog because they really wanted a robot that did exactly what it says every time they say it without question, but they couldn't afford a robot? No, me neither. Who in the audience got a dog because they really like dogs and they're great friends and they're fun and they're wiggly and soft and they lick your face sometimes and they do all these wonderful things? Yeah. You get that with positive reinforcement. You don't necessarily get that if you're mean to them all the time. Here's a nice, maybe better example for those of you scratching your head. Positive reinforcement, I'm adding a cookie to make the sit happen more. Positive punishment, I'm adding a smack and some bad teeth to make something happen less. Negative, I'm taking away something we don't like, something bad, to reinforce a behaviour. So I'm taking off the lead, so you're free. How good's that? And here I'm taking away something good. We're assuming that the dog really likes its mat. We're taking away its mat and it's like, oh, I won't do that again. Have a read of that. I sped on my way here. I'm not proud of that, but I didn't speed past the camera. So did the punishment mean that I don't have a speed? Or did it mean that I worked out how to avoid the consequences? Yeah, you did it too. Punishment risks a whole bunch of things. At best, we suppress that single behaviour. At worst, we can suppress all behaviour and end up with what's called learned helplessness. I'm not doing anything because everything I do loses. We can cause physical injury depending on how serious we go. We can cause trauma. We can damage the bond. Our dogs don't like us when we do those things. Lack of direction learning. I don't actually think punishment is teaching. We're not telling them what to do. The other thing is, if we teach a dog what to do, we're kind of choosing what that is, right? I'm like, hey, Andy, instead of yelling at the birds, this is a true thing. I throw a toy off the deck and he chases that toy and he smashes it on the way down and he loves it and he runs around in the yard with it and he's stuffed in his gob. And sometimes he'll see a bird and he'll be like, "Ah." But because I picked that behaviour, it kind of works, right? If I had have just zapped him every time he yelled, he would have picked the next thing. Do you think Andy would have picked a good next thing? Or would he have done something else dumb? Andy would do something dumb. There's lots of reasons not to. Equipment. So this is something that we all get a bit bogged down in, right? Leads, extendable, the pull out, pull in. I don't know that they're really leads. I guess if you've got a little 3 kilo dog, maybe. I've never had a little dog one day. Extendable. My notes did say extendable leads, throw them in the bin, but that might be a little bit extreme. I think pick the length based on what you're up to. So, you don't need a 5 metre lead to go for a walk along the esplanade. You do need a 5 metre lead if you're going to go for a sniff around the local park, or a 10 metre lead. You can do all sorts of cool things. Some double-ended leads that can be useful depending on what other gear we're using. Collars, I think simple flat collars are really good to walk calm dogs on. I think they're really bad to walk crazy dogs on because they're good at choking themselves. And I think anyone, and I'm talking about dogs, without a nose should probably not be walking on a collar, or any dog with a history of tracheal collapse. I think we just should avoid it. They can walk on something else. Limited slip, they're the ones that kind of pull to a certain slip but stop. I think they can be useful. I'm not using them to choke the dog as a punishment. I'm using it as a safety thing because if the dog tries to back out and run away, if you've got a dog that might spook it as a car backfires, it can stop it getting away. But I'm not chasing a slip lead, a choke collar. Thankfully, prong collars are on the way out. Shock collars. Don't know what a prong collar is? A prong collar is, I should have a photo. A prong collar is a metal device, looks a bit from a distance like a wide choker, except parts of that steel turn in and have exposed ends. So it slips like a choker, except instead of just contracting around that dog's neck, the steel ends poke in. And I've seen all kinds of injury. I said in that last slide, physical injury, that's one of them. And shock collars, same deal. The number of wounds I've treated on necks. Harnesses, I think harnesses are amazing. What for? Some of those harnesses with the big cushy fronts are super comfy to pull on. So if you don't want your dog to pull, let's not get a back clip harness with a nice big cushy front. They can be great for the car though. They might be good, or they might be good if you've got that amazing dog that never pulled on its lead in its whole life. Just don't tell me about it. Front clip harnesses can be really helpful. So there are lots of harnesses now that clip here and maybe there as well. And so when I'm naturally, if I'm a dog that likes to have a pull, I'm walking along and I kind of hit the end of the lead and I go, whoa, and it can help. Gear can help. That doesn't replace training, but it can help us. Halters, I think they can improve control. If you've got a 50 kilo German Shepherd and you're a 50 kilo human, sometimes we need some help there. I think they really need to be conditioned and that dog needs to be trained. We're not relying on that equipment. And muzzles, like I talked about before, we can Muzzles are awesome. If you've got a dog that doesn't like other dogs and you've tried all of those, I think they're cool, but like all of those leads and harnesses that say, please give me space, I'm in training, caution, I'm a bit nervous, and every muppet that walks past you completely ignores them, muzzle. No one ignores a muzzle, particularly if you've got like a 50-kilo German Shepherd. But they need to be trained. You don't just whack it on and go for a walk. You teach your dog to love that thing through classical conditioning. That's the gear bit. Training professionals. Have a conversation. If you're looking to engage with a training professional, have a chat to them. What are you going to do? What's the plan? Quick poll. Socialization is what I need to do with my 3-year-old dog who doesn't like going to the dog park. Yes? No. Socialization is a period. Sensitization, desensitization. Probably more people have heard of desensitization. It's a bit cooler topic than sensitization. So desensitization is what we do after sensitization to fix a problem. Desensitization, and we'll dive into this in the next lectures, I promise. This is what the next lectures will be about. But it's about exposing a dog to a potential trigger, to a trigger, below the threshold at which we elicit that response, that reactive response. And over time, that response should diminish. The opposite of that is sensitization, where we're over threshold and we're increasing that reactivity. Flooding is another word for that. Habituation is a process that happens naturally when we're lucky. And it's about us deciding, our brains deciding for us which stimuli are important and which are not. So for instance, how many of you have been sitting thinking about the air conditioning noise? It's pretty noisy, but our brains tune it out. Thankfully, right? We don't want all that going on. We'd run out of space. And so thankfully, most of our dogs habituate to a whole bunch of stuff. Cars driving past down the street, motorbike coming past. Some dogs are lucky enough to thunder, We habituate to stuff and it's like, tune it out. Oh, it's not that important. It's a passive process. It's not something we train. Counter conditioning is about conditioning different behaviours and different emotional states. And so often you'll hear people talk about desensitization and counter conditioning. So reducing the reaction to a specific trigger and positively reinforcing an alternative behaviour, a different behaviour, and either in the process or as our focus, conditioning a positive emotional response. So just a bit of terminology, wet the whistle before the next sessions. Before I get to a couple of great questions that came through, things I would like for you to walk away with tonight. Dogs have evolved and become and domesticated to be a highly social species, social amongst themselves and social with us, but it's their own kind of social. It's dog social. It's not monkey social. Dominance. I didn't tell you, dominance has its place, but it's not in us talking about our dogs. At the dog park, in our home, it's not relevant. I deliberately picked those words. Development is relevant. That's socialization. That's adolescence. These things affect our dog's behaviour and affect how we're going to have to interact with them. Dogs communicate in a number of ways, but particularly through body language, and we can learn to read and interpret that stuff. And I was having a conversation down here earlier and I said, hey, listen, I want you to look at some of this stuff and I want you to learn some of this stuff, but also don't get caught in the weeds, right? Like some of these things are obvious, My golden retriever friend, when he turns 10 years old, not months, not weeks, and comes bounding across the park at me, big and fat and slow on his tails, lay down, enjoy it, like get covered in slobber. Don't overanalyze everything, but know that we can read and interpret these things and we can do better for us and we can do better for our dogs and we can keep our dogs and everyone else's dogs safe. A bit of doggy housekeeping. keep them at home. I know most of the time that's a mistake, and I know it will be for people in this room, but keep them confined at home for their sake and everyone else's. Keep them on lead. I'm really, really jealous of all the people who can just walk their dog off lead. It just doesn't help anyone else. I spend most days dealing with someone with a reactive dog who really doesn't love being up close and personal with other dogs, and they do their best to manage that dog. And then when they come across someone that's just kicking around with their dog off lead, just having the best day, you know, taking it easy, bro, like don't worry about it, it can ruin a lot of things. So please keep your dogs on lead. Teach our pets about our expectations. Avoid, when we can, manage interactions, set up those antecedents, monitor that body language, and manage to avoid tension and negative outcomes. So 2-year-old Amstaff Cross, who was nervous but bonded with, when adopted, but bonded with the family's older dog who has passed away. I'm sorry to hear that. And has regressed since. Tips to help her confidence. Yeah, that's a hard one. Again, I think of it in 3 ways. I'd be thinking about, is there anything I can do, either my behaviour or where we are, that improves that confidence? So are there places we are, you know, is being at home better? Is being in a certain room better? I'd be spending as much time there, you know, really trying to improve that dog's comfort. And, you know, then out and about can be hard, but would walking with another, you know, if then leaving the house is a hard thing, can we meet a friend? You know, is there another dog that it's not your sister, but maybe it's your friend, and can that help? Again, medication might come into it, and I don't want to sound like that's the answer to all of our woes, but it can help. I think the next talks, if you come to those, guys, could really help, just in terms of, we'll talk through treatment plans and a broad approach that will apply to any problem. And last, this one applies to tonight. What's the best age for puppies to be separated from their mum and litter mates? And I appreciate I'm taking now your time, so I'll make this quick, but it's an amazing question. The answer comes in 2 forms. One is, in my ideal world where people breed puppies because they are interested in creating the best puppies that we can possibly breed, I would like them to stick around for longer than we're doing. And I'd like them to stay with theirs through the socialisation period, so that they've got mum and they've got their litter mates, but that involves breeders that are getting stimulus into the home. So they're inviting friends over of different shapes, sizes, colours, ages. They're taking those dogs out and about. They're handling them from week 1 in certain ways. They're doing a lot of things that I know breeders are not doing. So that's my unicorn dream world. We might get there one day. Realistically, I would probably want my dog somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks, because that's a good chunk of change with mum. They get to wean off mum at a semi-normal time. So puppies would normally wean slowly off mum through to like 14, 16 weeks, maybe even longer. If mum's tolerant of those bloody teeth, they'll wean slow, and so then they just slowly decide to bugger off and find something to eat. But yeah, I think realistically, 8 to 10 weeks, they get some time with mum, they get some time with the litter, they get some time with us in our new world while they're still in that socialisation period. So I get 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 weeks even, depending. The socialisation period doesn't cut off like a door slamming, right? You know, it weans down. So we get that period of time where I can say, hey, little dude, you grew up on a farm and all you knew about was the farmer and the litter of puppies and a dirt bike. Good for dirt bikes, but you know, you don't know anything about having neighbours that are like 5 metres away and the 4 children that live there, or You know, that when we go down to the local park, there's 8 people and 14 dogs, you know, so they're in our house for a little bit to get used to that. But yeah, thank you so much for being here tonight, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for giving me your attention. I really appreciate it. I hope to see some of you at the future sessions. Cheers.